Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about the very best 2-bay NAS to buy from every brand right now at the beginning of 2020. Let's face it, whether it's your first tippy toe into the world of network attached storage or you're looking to buy an upgrade to your existing 2-bay model, now at the beginning of 2020 there is lots of new and old equipment available, and because NAS has been around for so long there is an enormous number of devices to choose from. And what I want to help you guys with today is a few things. One, I want to help you choose the right NAS brand for your data, which is almost as important as the NAS you buy itself, because the brand represents both the software you're going to use, the hardware they choose for you, and more importantly, in the event of failures or issues in the future, you want to know that the brand is going to back you up. And although all the NAS brands I talk about on the channel, quite frankly, all have a very rigid structure of support, their priorities and what they will provide to you do change between brands, and ultimately that could help you choose which one of them deserves your money and ultimately your data. The other thing I want to talk about is whether it's worth buying new or old, because even though this video is being recorded right at the start of 2020, in January 2020 to be precise, chances are that just a handful of months down the line these choices may have been superseded by something bigger or better. So do bear that in mind about the time at which you're buying these devices. But without further ado, let's get into the meat and veg of today's video. So, regardless of whichever one of these 2-bay NASs, I'm going to pick one from each brand that you decide to go for. It's worth highlighting that regardless, you will get the following. One, you will get a NAS that has got at least 2 years of warranty, or in some cases 3 years of warranty from the brand. Two, it will support the very latest hard drives and SSDs that are commercially available, which currently is around 4 TB for commercial grade SSDs and up to 16 terabytes in commercial hard drives from Seagate Ironwolf and 14 TB from WD Red. Regardless of which one of these you go for, you will get support of RAID 0, RAID 1 and JBOD, which means you can either have loose drives or have the two drives mirrored or combine the storage all together, and in some cases specialized RAIDs specifically available to that brand. Also, regardless of which one of these you go for, you are going to get a NAS that can support a Plex media server, have a surveillance platform, or at least be usable as surveillance software mapped storage if it doesn't have its own platform, or utilizing it for simple multimedia streaming of photos, videos, music, and just general file sharing. All of the NAS brands today support access over the network and the internet, and all of the NAS brands we're talking about today are supported by Windows, by Mac, by iOS and Android. So if you are one of these users, any of them are going to be accessible to you. But without further ado, let's get into my first choice, and we're going to talk about Synology Nas. Right now, the best 2-bay Synology NAS that you can buy at the start of 2020, and if you're going right for the very best, it is the DS718 Plus. Now, yes, this NAS is over 2 years old, and we're still waiting on the newer generation from Synology. But I think unless they're going to really upgrade that CPU, I don't think you're going to fall far wrong of the 718 Plus. But before I get onto that, why choose Synology? Well, one, this device has got 3 years of warranty from them, and they have a very, very good presence worldwide, which means regardless of wherever you are in the world, you will probably get very good turnaround on things like an RMA or tech support. Also, their brand is very, very user-friendly. They're one of the most user-friendly NAS devices that you can currently buy in terms of the setup and the user interface. It may be a little too user-friendly for more technically versed, but we'll get onto that later. On top of that, if you're a Mac user, you will love their user interface. The DSM platform 6.2 with DSM 7 just around the corner does provide a huge amount of user-friendly appeal and kind of novice hand-holding that a number of you new to this world will definitely take advantage of. Now, another thing that you get with Synology NAS only is SHR, Synology Hybrid RAID, the ability to mix and match drives inside your device. Now, that's not something you're going to take advantage of from day dot. Chances are the first drives you put inside this device, whether it's one or two, are going to be the same capacity at the beginning. But years down the line, you may want to mix things up with bigger and better drives, and SHR allows you to do that. If you want more information on SHR, open up another tab and type in what is SHR. I'm willing to bet you find my video there. But let's talk about the DS718 Plus. It's by far the most powerful 2-bay they've ever released, and the DS718 Plus arrives with a quad-core Intel-based CPU, the J3455. So this 4-core x86 chip CPU, 64-bit architecture, is a 1.5 GHz CPU that can be burst up to 2.3 GHz per core. It also arrives with 2 GB of DDR3L memory that can be upgraded to 6 GB officially. The device can also be expanded by another 5 bays, and on top of that, the device arrives with 2 LAN ports on the rear, meaning that you can link aggregate and get up to 2 gigabit Ethernet connectivity with this device. Now, I know it may be looking a little bit long in the tooth, but as 2-bay NASes go, it's very hard to beat if you're looking at a Synology NAS. And as I say, other than upgrading that CPU, there's not much more they can do to this device. Maybe the network ports in 2020 as well, to make this more appealing to you, with the added bonus that a new Synology 2-bay, such as the DS720 Plus, if that ever arrives, will definitely arrive at a higher price tag, which means that this one may become quite the bargain. Now, it's worth mentioning this NAS gives you the very best performance in a 2-bay from things like BTRFS as a file system to really get the best performance possible, and things like Surveillance Station run at their very, very best for a 2-bay on this device. Don't get me wrong, BTRFS, Surveillance Station, Synology's multimedia application, Synology Drive, Synology Chat, Synology Office, Synology Mail, or an active backup suite, and Virtual Machine with Synology Virtual Machine Manager are all available on other more powerful Synology NAS devices. But this is the best entry level to all of those services. And talking about BTRFS, although it's available on other NAS platforms, in my performance comparisons of BTRFS in simple read, write, upload, download, and 10 GBE, it performed the best on this platform than any other. Even though BTRFS is available on other platforms, Synology really knows their way around their architecture and generally gives you a lot more out of the hardware on offer. But if you're looking for another NAS brand, let's move on a little further. Let's talk about Qnap. Let's face it, I can't talk about Synology without talking about Qnap. And Qnap have a number of 2-bay solutions that have been released over the last few years. And although right now the one I'm going to recommend may not be the most powerful 2-bay currently on offer from them, it's definitely the most modern and seems to give the most right now. And at the beginning of 2020, I strongly recommend you check out the soon to be released, and by soon I mean a matter of weeks, the Qnap TS251D. Now, this is a lovely little 2-bay, and although the CPU doesn't technically produce more power than the 253BE released a year and a half ago, it's worth mentioning that the new TS251D gives you quite a lot for your money and at a very, very affordable price tag. Now, Qnap as a NAS brand doesn't provide you with things like Synology's hybrid RAID, fluid RAID system, and this device only arrives with 2 years of warranty versus the 3 years on that Synology. But it makes up for it, and just in an extraordinary fashion. First and foremost, the CPU inside is significantly more efficient and gives you so much more for the typical power usage. It arrives with the J4005 CPU, a dual-core 2.0 GHz CPU that can be burst up to 2.7 GHz. It supports 4K transcoding and 1080p transcoding, both in terms of local output and via Plex media server, although not the tippity top that you might expect from an i3 or an i5. On top of that, the device arrives with HDMI output and USB ports that support everything from external storage to Wi-Fi dongles to keyboards, mice and peripheral devices that let you control the output of this NAS. The HDMI on the rear of this is a 60 frames per second 4K output in the form of HDMI 2.0A, which is a big deal, because with this device arriving at the price point that it does, for a 2-bay, you are getting a hell of a lot for your money in terms of efficiency and output. On top of that, the sky is the limit, because even though it arrives with 2 GB of DDR4 memory, it can be upgraded to 8 GB, more than the Synology one we talked about, and the PCIe slot on the rear allows you to upgrade even further, with this PCIe slot allowing you to add third-party unofficial cards that allow you to add 10 GBE, 2.5 GBE, 5 GBE, and even some higher connections as well. It also allows you to connect M2 SSD cache and NVMe SSD cache cards as well. So the kind of fluid growth of this device and the upgradability makes it exceptionally appealing, along with a much more modern and efficient CPU in terms of what it can do graphically and more. Now, as a brand, Qnap differs from Synology in a few small ways. First and foremost, their software, their graphical user interface known as QTS, currently QTS 4.4.1, is only a pinch less user-friendly than the Synology, but what it makes up for is being so much more customizable. And you don't even need that much user experience, because there was a time when I would compare the Synology and Qnap software user interfaces and say that the Synology was more user-friendly but more simplistic, whereas the Qnap was a little bit tougher to get your head around, only a little, but arrived with far more potential and ability and configuration. But Qnap have carved their own way in what they do, and 4.4.1 is incredibly intuitive application now, with a whole host of first-party apps that have really changed the way I look at that software, with things like hybrid backup sync, with hybrid mount, hybrid backup sync 3, but hybrid backup sync 3, by the way, is one of the best backup and synchronization tools I've ever used, I've got to say. On top of that, their own multimedia applications and support of third-party applications, as well as providing much better hardware options so you can use your own third-party apps to a much higher extent, make both the Qnap NAS an attractive and appealing option for power users, as well as being affordable too. But that's the main two brands that we always talk about on the channel. Let's talk about the other ones, the ones that don't quite get exposed as much. Let's talk about Acer Store with that Nimbus Store 2. This is a 2-bay NAS that I have harped on about for most of 2019 and into the beginning of 2020. It is still worthy of your attention. The Nimbus Store 2 is one of the most affordable 2-bays on this list, with Acer Store arriving with a host of applications that kind of find a middle ground between first and third party support, and they have really improved things over the last few years. When I first talked about them here on the channel a couple of, maybe 2.5 years ago, I mentioned that they seem to not give a great deal of first party stuff compared with third party coverage, but they found a better balance now in 2020 with the latest updates of their ADM software. The platform itself is nowhere near as notorious as Qnap and Synology as far as purchasability and where you can find it across the world, although they do have a very good footing compared with other lesser brands underneath them. On top of that, ADM arrived with a lot of first-party support for things like surveillance, with their own surveillance center application, which, although isn't quite as fluid and smooth as Synology or Qnap's offering, it's still pretty damn close. On top of that, they've got their own first-party applications for handling music, photos and video, and support of third-party applications, some of which you cannot find on other platforms. So I recommend you check out the live demo of ADM to find out more about that. On top of that, this device arrives with a couple of years of warranty, but you can also have add-on packages, warranty extensions, and different cloud services bolted to it that are not available in this way with other brands. Case in point, Synology and Qnap have kind of their own backup management and cloud backup management tools, where it's one tool that connects to all the cloud services, which again is very good. One Swiss Army knife tool for handling cloud, rsync, and basically NAS to NAS and USB backups. But with Acer Store, they have got that tool, but also individual tools for each cloud provider. So they've got a DropBox tool, they've got a Google tool, and if you want a far more bespoke application for that one cloud management tool or USB management tool, you just want to focus on the one, this may be open to you rather than a Swiss Army knife. Again, there's arguments for both sides on that, but in my overviews of ADM, particularly on the Nimbus Store 4 that I was using, you can see what I mean by the comparison between them, so I recommend you check those out. But if we talk about the Nimbus Store 2, we can talk a little bit more about the device itself. Now, the comparisons between the Nimbus Store 2 and that Qnap NAS, the TS251D, are pretty clear. They both use the same CPU, the J4005 that we talked about, and they both arrive with DDR4 memory that can be upgraded officially to 8 gig. But the Nimbus Store 2 arrives with an extra little feature under the belt. It arrives with 2.5 GBE ports as standard, 2 of them to be precise, which means with link aggregation, this device can support up to 5 gigabit Ethernet, something not available on the other platforms, and something if you're someone that's buying a NAS for PC gaming, if you're using it for editing of large raw files, will be very appealing to you. Also, this device arrives at a lower price than the Synology and the Qnap offering. So again, very, very appealing indeed. And although they don't have the blanket coverage or the market share that Synology and Qnap have, it's still a very impressive product. So what follows this? I want to talk about a brand that I talk about a lot, namely Terra Master. Now, Terra Master is probably the smallest brand of all the ones we're going to talk about. They've not been around as long as Synology, Qnap or Acer Store, but they definitely carved their piece of the pie. And with a huge ability to be found on the websites such as Amazon, then you see that they have a driving market share for the economic buyer, the people that have got a little less money to spend and are looking for value. Now, the F5 422 NAS, this 2-bay that they have been producing, is a great little 2-bay. Also, the F2 422. It is a quad-core 2-bay NAS. It's got the same CPU as the DS718 Plus. It also arrives with 4 gig of DDR3L memory, but it arrives with one hardware feature I have never seen on a 2-bay NAS. And if you're looking for economical purchases, or you're looking for a NAS where you're more interested in using your own third-party client applications for your Windows or Mac systems or mobile devices, and are looking for a rugged, reliable setup for get storage, the Terra Master might be for you, because this device arrives with that quad-core CPU and support the same hard drives and SSD, but it arrives with 4 LAN ports on the rear. That's right, it can have up to 4 cables link aggregated into 4 GBE, which with 2 hard drives or a hard drive and SSD, you can get the full potential speed of that RAID 1 environment via those 4 LAN ports. And although it lacks the 2.5 GBE that we talked about from the Acer Store, this is an older NAS and the lowest priced of all 4 NASs that we're talking about today. Remember, the Qnap and the Acer Store, dual core, more modern CPU, sure, but with the Terra Master arriving at a noticeable lower price than all 4 of the NASs I'm talking about today, it is definitely one for the people that are more interested in hardware than software. Let's talk about Terra Master, the brand. Again, in terms of support and kind of worldwide presence, they're the least notorious of the 4. And by notorious, I know you're hearing the negative word there. Try to skip away from that. Where they do live is a huge presence on Amazon, and they wouldn't have a presence on Amazon without things like Prime and their own policies to maintain and stay the course and basically keep in customers' good books. So in terms of stockage and when there's returns of items, then certainly they do have a swift RMA and turnaround policy, but it all depends if you're buying from Amazon and relying more on their return policy and replacement policy than the brand itself. Because if you do have a problem, and I can speak from personal experience from a couple of years ago, if you do have an issue, and I had one with a PSU failure, got that turned around, new unit next day. So they got that going for them via the Amazon system. But how much of that was Amazon and how much was them, that's for you guys to decide, I guess, and because we'll never really know. But as far as the brand and the unit's concerned, they have support of BTRFS, just like Synology, just like Acer Store. They have got support of synchronization tools. They've got our own virtual machine platform. Again, all 4 of the NAS brands we're talking about today have got that, but they don't have their own dedicated surveillance platform, only being available as mapped network storage and more. And as far as the brand goes, there's a reason that they are at the economic end of the scale more than anyone else, and that's because although their first-party storage is very good and the TOS software is pretty impressive for what it is these days, there's still no denying that of the 4, their design's the most dated of the lot, and their software feels a little behind the others. And although it's pretty polished and pretty fluid, it's not as intuitive and definitely not as smooth a running as Synology, Qnap or Acer Store right now. But to save a few pennies, definitely one to make your list. Now, what about business? Because it isn't just home users or, a couple of guys that work above a shop that are using 2-bay NASs. What about bigger business? Bigger business vendors such as Netgear, Buffalo and more do have their own range of 2-bay devices, and I do recommend you check those out. In fact, Buffalo actually have a 2-bay 10 GBE NAS solution, something I have never seen before. And Netgear have a number of solutions that are rugged as hell, but their software, not great. And although there are other brands that we're not going to talk about today, like Zixel, if that's how it's pronounced, and Drobo, and more, these are brands that, although they are existing in the 2-bay market, they don't really have a presence, and I don't recommend them for you. But in terms of 2 bays to buy at the start of 2020, these are my 4 picks, one per of each brand. If we look at the Synology, once again, it's the DS718 Plus. If we look at Qnap, it's the brand new TS251D. If we look at Acer Store, it's of course Nimbus Store 2, and from Terra Master, it is that F2 series. Do check those out. I will be doing a video just like this on 4 bays and 8 bays, and trust me, things are going to get a lot more powerful. So if you've got a recommendation that didn't make this list, or you think that one of these NASes isn't the best 2-bay from that brand, then do let me know in the comments. But otherwise, click like if you've enjoyed this, click subscribe to learn more, and I'll see you next time. Not the small town girl living in the Lord. Hello, and thank you for watching Span TV. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like and subscribe, and don't tell anyone what you saw today. Check them out, all our videos on Synology, Qnap, NAS, Thunderbolt storage, and all the rest of it. Once again, I can't stress not to tell anyone about what you saw today. Now go away.